We're going to get a spot Bitcoin ETF. When we do, Bitcoin will move 25 to 30% in 2 days. People are getting ahead of that. I think we'll go back down and test 37 again. I hope I'm wrong.
I think big rip, then a huge dip to take profit, and then we go search for all-time highs. I totally agree with exactly what you're saying.
This question, there's been a lot.
I suspected we did something very significant about the $26 trillion Treasury market, which is really the base of our entire capital markets. It's how we fund our government. It's how our Federal Reserve does monetary policy. It's how we maintain the dollar dominance around the globe. And you want to ask me about crypto?
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. Now, if we have a look at Bitcoin, we have actually recovered from this sort of dump, and you can see if we zoom in right here, every single one of these daily candles has pretty much been putting in a higher low, and you could even say that we're putting in some form of a consolidation pattern right now. Now, what's very interesting about why this may have happened, as you can see over here, the DXY, or the dollar index, actually continues to fall. So we had Powell come out and pretty much say that right now they're just going to keep rates where they are. They're not looking to raise anymore, although of course they say there may be that potential, but this is sending that signal that this cycle, essentially, for the Fed raising rates could really be coming to an end, and now they're actually even factoring in potential rate cuts as early as March of next year. So obviously, this has created that strength, you know, for example, in the Bitcoin price, why we've been able to hold these levels. But something that I really want to talk about today specifically is the ETF approval, of course, that is the big news, but I want to talk about Gary Gensler and the SEC and how they just continue to ignore and skirt around these questions. In fact, they were recently asked to pretty much provide more clear regulatory framework, and they basically just ignored it. Now, why do they keep ignoring this, right? Is it because they work for the banks and all this other stuff? Well, actually, the real reason may actually be slightly more nefarious on their part, and I would like to explain that to you, but I'm telling you right now, the SEC is finding themselves backed into a corner. Now, we also had some very big news that came out 2 days ago, and I'm going to be quite honest, I didn't have an opportunity to make a video. I was traveling, but I really didn't see a lot of people talking about it, and the news could actually be bigger than most people are making it out to be. I want to tell you guys why. If you just ignore all the FUD, 2024 is possibly going to be one of the most massive years for Bitcoin. I want to talk about the $30 trillion Bitcoin shock that we could see. And I mean, of course, it wouldn't be a crypto video without a crazy Bitcoin price prediction. So we have someone who just came out. I'm not making this up. I'm just being the middleman here. $64 million Bitcoin in the next 6 years. Is that possible? How does that math work out? So if all that sounds good to you, you know what to do. If you're not subscribed, lots of interesting content we're going to go over today, guys. And I did also want to just mention, if you guys are looking for an exchange to trade on, it's been pretty bad lately with the KYC. Even KuCoin has now had an issue with New York State. I'm sure you've seen it's getting harder and harder to basically find exchanges to trade on. LeveX is currently an exchange that I've been in talks with literally all year. I even personally met with them in Dubai. This is something I haven't really talked about. And I don't like to mention things on my channel unless I do my due diligence, and I have to say, this exchange thus far is very legit, and I've had an opportunity to actually bring a deal to you guys if you want. If you sign up using the link below in the description, not only are you going to get 10% cash back on fees for life, so basically all the trades that you make, they're going to give you 10% cash back in a separate account that you can claim and use for whatever you want, but also for the first 500 people that sign up, they're going to match any trade up to $5K okay, and give you a free long or short position. So it's basically free money you can just play with. And if you win the trade, you get to keep the money. So it's a pretty good opportunity for the first 500 people. Check that out if you guys are interested. LeveX, I do have that below, and I'll put out a tutorial, obviously. So that is just getting that out of the way. Now let's super quick highlight what happened. So, essentially the Fed's interest rates, they're saying that they're remaining constant. And you can see right now, like Kevin Svensson points out, there's about a 74% chance of a rate cut after the March meeting.
They start in June and go 175 into the election.
Right now, there is a 74% chance of a rate cut at the March meeting for the Federal Reserve. That is what I'm looking at in terms of what people are expecting. If the Fed is currently talking about cutting rates, why would they wait until June? For politics, they could be accused of political interference either way, deciding on when they move.
So it's really funny how they've basically been trying everything in their power to break something, and yet we have Bitcoin continuing to move to the upside. I mean, we even have the S&P like 2% away from the all-time highs, right? It seems like it's not really working. But getting back to the whole Bitcoin thing with Gary Gensler and the SEC, I want to just play you this clip. This is just like an introductory before we get into the deeper part of the video. So they were asking them about Bitcoin, and he just watch this. He almost gets like offended.
Obviously, the commission and the staff of the commission is still hard at work on a number of issues, one of them dealing with a number of filings of spot Bitcoin ETFs. Mr. Chair, I have to ask you this question. There has been a lot.
I suspected we did something very significant about the $26 trillion Treasury market, which is really the base of our entire capital markets. It's how we fund our government. It's how our Federal Reserve does monetary policy. It's how we maintain the dollar dominance around the globe. And you want to ask me about crypto?
In my defense, Commissioner Ueda also brought up crypto in this open meeting.
Priorities. I mean, the U.S. Treasury market is a very consequential, very important market. Crypto securities are not only much smaller, it's not how we fund our government, it's not how we conduct monetary policy, and for many investors, they've been harmed in that market. And they're being harmed because there's too much non-compliance. And it's not just non-compliance with securities laws, it's non-compliance with a raft of other laws. Our sister regulator in the market space, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the U.S. Department of Treasury, and Financial Crimes Enforcement. But again, I do ask, and if you look at the focus and the priorities, the U.S. Treasury market and what we did today is really quite important to our capital markets.
So again, Gensler takes the opportunity to talk about how it's rife with fraud and all this manipulation and bad actors. But here's the interesting thing. So the SEC announced that they actually rejected a petition submitted by Coinbase, obviously the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the US, to establish cryptocurrency rules and regulations. So Coinbase literally reached out and said, hey, I think it's time that we update this whole Howey test. We're working on something that's like 100 years old, right? And in the letter, the SEC basically said, no. We're not going to change it. They said that the existing framework is fine, right? Because rules that were made 100 years ago totally apply to cryptocurrency, right? In the statement, Gensler said, I was pleased to support this decision. Existing laws also apply to crypto securities markets. The SEC is addressing crypto security markets through rulemaking. No, they're not. I haven't seen any rulemaking whatsoever. I've just seen how Wells notices and fines, and they say it's important to maintain discretion. So again, why, and I do want to play the second part, because as you guys can see right here, again, you have Commissioner Hester Pierce, Commissioner Mark T. Ueda, I've never actually heard his name pronounced. They said, we are disappointed that the commission is not hosting these important conversations. We will have an open ear for conversation that others host, and, basically they're calling them out, right? And again, like I said, before I play the rest of this video, so there is the idea, right, that, this threatens the system, right? Bitcoin puts the money into the individuals. It goes around the banks, and, JP Morgan's pissed off because he's not going to get his fees, right? But at the same time, if you just think about the selfishness of the SEC, right now they are just they're having a good old time, right? They're just fining people left and right? Oh, you had an unregistered security, pay us this, pay us 40 million, pay us 100,000. You're an influencer that talked about something, right? But again, they're not making the clear guidelines guidelines. And if they made those clear guidelines, well, then they would have to abide by them, and then the rules would be clear. But because the rules aren't clear, what happens? Well, they're able to reach out to these smaller people. You know, like for example, not everybody has $50 million or something like Coinbase to fight the SEC. So a lot of times they're just going to settle it in court. They're going to plead guilty, pay the fine, and move on. And the SEC continues to rake in all of this free money by keeping it specifically vague and opaque so you don't know the rules, right? Well, again, they were pressed over here about the ETF approval. Essentially, they lost the grayscale case. You know, they are really what they're doing is they're basically lying. They're pretty much lying in court, and the judges are calling them out. So you could see the shift in the tone, and this is where they talk about the significance of actually starting to have some meaningful conversations with a lot of these ETF appliers.
So what is your question about Bitcoin?
We have seen in recent days SEC staff engaging with issuers, of a number of which have filed for spot ETFs. We've seen a number of amendments to those filings. It seems that market participants in crypto have a sense that we are reaching the end stages here. Typically, is this kind of engagement with the SEC not prejudging anyone filing, but the level of engagement we are seeing signifying of things getting easier, closer to resolving, or things getting more difficult?
Again, we have, I think, somewhere between 8 and a dozen filings in front of this agency with regard to exchange-traded products around Bitcoin. And the staff of the various divisions respond when market participants have filings. We also had a court case earlier this fall in this regard, and so we do things according to our authorities and how courts interpret our authorities, and that's what we'll do here as well.
I think you're referring there to the grayscale case.
And you had Bloomberg Intelligence ETF research analyst James Seyfarth basically saying in a nutshell, I think the SEC has kind of been backed into a corner here by the judges, basically throwing out every decision and reasoning it's used to deny an ETF in the past. And remember, once the court says that this is not a legitimate reason to deny an ETF, they're going to have to get clever and come up with other reasons because you can't use the same reason again, right? We've already had a decision in the court. He goes on to say, I think the SEC and Chair Gary Gensler know that they were overplaying their hand a bit and are kind of forced into a corner right now, right? He goes on to say that the court threw away every decision and reasoning that the SEC used to deny a Bitcoin ETF in the past, and Gary Gensler knows that they were overplaying, right? So again, we just said that, but he says the SEC bluffed and Grayscale called it. And again, talking about the shift, even though, yes, you know, he still is vague about it, he skirts around the details, still won't say whether or not Ethereum is or isn't a security, you can see now he's over on CNBC, and he's discussing that, you know, we can't deny the fact that we did deny it, and the court is telling us that we can't do that anymore, so we're going to have to be kind of forced to take a look into it, and we're really running out of reasons to deny this ETF.
On another topic, approval process going for a spot Bitcoin ETF. I know you're facing a window in early January. What does that look like?
Well, Sarah, we have, I think it's between 8 and a dozen filings. I'm a chair of a commission. I'm not to prejudge anything, so that's going through the process right now. And as you might know, we had in the past denied a number of these applications, but the courts here in the District of Columbia weighed in on that. And so we're taking a new look at this based upon those court rulings.
Market's excited about it.
And it honestly is a shame. It's almost embarrassing to think that these are some of the three-letter organizations that are in the United States here to protect its customers, right? Because they totally protected us from FTX, who he had meetings with on multiple occasions, but refused to ever get back to Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, as well as, you know, Luna and Celsius and BlockFi, right? But you guys, you know, you're protecting the investors, right? Now, something interesting that was crazy news that not a lot of people were talking about was the fact that Bitcoin will be recorded at fair value under the new FASB rule that was issued. You can see right here, those crypto assets at fair value reporting periods with changes in fair value recognized in net income. So this is huge because previously companies could only value their Bitcoin at the lowest price since they bought, which means they would have to record losses, but not the gains when the price recovered. Bitcoin keeps winning. And honestly, I don't really feel like diving into this because it's kind of a boring topic, but the reality is that these are all things in the traditional system that are being applied to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin was this big old nothing burger, if it was just a fad, if they were looking to ban it, right, or whatever it is that people think is going to happen, we would not have all these ETF applications. We would not have the SEC adding literally just a couple days ago a cryptocurrency tab to investor.gov. We would not have all of these talks that are going on right now. And just to kind of break down why 2024 is going to be massive, like James Van Straten pointed out, January, most likely an ETF approval. I mean, if they deny this thing, somebody was saying it was almost like, you guys remember back in Charlie Brown, the Peanuts, when they would like pull the football out? They're saying it could be like that, but I mean, realistically, again, they're running out of grounds for denial. February, you could have the ETF potentially trading, right? It could take a little bit longer. I mean, it's not like, and again, everyone thinks the ETF is going to get approved and then all the money's going to rush in. It's going to take months to even, throughout the course of the year to really get the ball rolling, right? There's a lot of applications. Then there's also the financial advisors themselves. It's a very, very long and interesting road ahead, but nevertheless, it is a road to really just success for Bitcoin in the long run. March, potential for first rate cut. April, of course, the Bitcoin halving. May through November, rate cuts and liquidity. And then, of course, the big December, FASB is expected to adopt their fair value accounting for Bitcoin. So, I mean, rate cuts and liquidity. I mean, you know what happens when they turn on the money printer. If you're watching this video, you have already made it through the worst part. They were trying everything they had to break the system, and yet Bitcoin continued to prevail, okay? So again, I just think if this is what Bitcoin was doing during massive rate hikes and tightening, can you even imagine what it will do with liquidity injection and money printing? I still think a lot of people don't understand, exactly how big this is. And Mark Yusko actually explained the significance of this $30 trillion shock and what really happens when you have all this money on the sideline and these big players finally getting off what he refers to as zero.
I think missed sometimes is just the amount of money out there that is in these little boxes, these rule boxes. And there's 30 trillion by Eric Balchunis's, I think I'm saying his last name right.
Balchunis. Yeah.
Balchunis, yep. And, 30 trillion, it's a big number, that can't, at this point, buy Bitcoin directly, right? But they can, in many cases, not all, buy things like, MicroStrategy or Coinbase because they're listed companies, as opposed to, UBS won't let me buy GBTC, whatever. But when this ETF happens, that's going to be a dicey period because then it's like, well, I don't have to buy MicroStrategy, which is a questionable software business tacked on to a big honeypot of Bitcoin. And I don't have to pay a premium anymore for Coinbase. And I think Coinbase will do well because their business is going to skyrocket, right? Because they're going to do custody for these ETFs and they're going to, get ancillary benefit. And when the institutions really come, because yes, there's an institutional bid, but it's with this many people. I mean, I'm not, and I actually have numbers to back it up because I'm still smiling and dialing and trying to get people to meet. It's crazy how many people in the institutional world are still stuck on zero, literally zero. It's 80+% of institutions. But the reason you need Bitcoin in your portfolio and all the institutions, every single one of them is going to have it. This is the crazy thing. Every single one of them will, and I've been saying this for years, right? Get off zero. I've been saying since 2017. And all that means is, and I said 10 years, and now we're, 6 years in, so it's only 4 more years from now. you will be deemed fiduciarily irresponsible.
Oh, and didn't we call it, guys? All of a sudden, look at these new articles that are coming out. Remember how bad Bitcoin was for the environment? Remember they had predicted that by 2020, it could be using more electricity to mine Bitcoin than like the world or like a country or something? Well, guess what, guys? That's not happening. In fact, they say a fresh look at Bitcoin's ESG credentials. Could Bitcoin actually be ESG friendly? Wow, that's an interesting narrative. Just like Larry Fink had said several years ago, basically that he wouldn't touch Bitcoin with a 10-foot pole. He doesn't even think about it. And now it's a flight to safety, a flight to quality, and we're rolling out the ETF, boys. Again, this is why I say don't listen to them. Watch what they do, okay? Because they talk a lot and they tend to do the complete opposite, right? And this is that crazy $64 million prediction. This is by Luke Mikic. He's over at CoinBeast. Now, this might be a little bit crazy, but I do like to add these fun little predictions in here, so I just kind of wanted to end the news segment with this.
64 million by 2030. So I wrote this article in 2021, looking at Bitcoin through the lens of it being an emergent technological revolution. And I said, hey, look, if Bitcoin is going to be adopted by the masses, it's going to be adopted in an exponential fashion. For every $1 that flows into Bitcoin in a very narrow window of time in 2021 in the bull market, they believe it pushed the Bitcoin market cap up by like 119x. So I think the larger the amount of capital trying to come in, certainly I think it could be, we could have a higher Bitcoin multiplier effect. The multiplier effect is going to be higher in bull markets. And I think the larger the amount of capital that tries to flow in, like $1 trillion, like you said, I think that is going to have a larger impact on the multiplier effect. Maybe it goes up to 6, 10, maybe it's 15 in a short amount of time. It's very difficult to measure in the short term. That's why I like to kind of zoom out and use like a 5-year moving average of the multiplier effect. And right now, as we speak, it's actually nearly at an all-time high. I think at the time of recording, the multiplier effect is around 4.8, and that is nearly the highest level it has ever been. So interesting times for this up-and-coming bull market.
I mean, hey, if Bitcoin goes to 64 million in 6 years, then realistically, any price at these levels is theoretically a good price to buy, right? So having a look right here, you guys could see that we are still above this blue zone. And again, I have been cautious about this because remember, we've never seen Bitcoin put in 9 weekly candles that were red. And, you know, obviously if Bitcoin really can't get back above 43,818 by the end of this week, then we could probably put that theory not to rest. Actually, it remains a theory that Bitcoin generally doesn't see more than 8 weekly candles. So this was expected, and it also coincided with getting into this. I don't have it literally red, but anything above this blue zone is a little bit overextended for one single move. I mean, you can even see during this massive rally here, we never had more than 8 candles. There's always consolidation, there's always retests, and we really haven't had a retest with the exception of the top of this level right here. But I mean, you have levels, and not to say that we have to go down, but we never really had a proper retest of around the 33,000. I guess this is an okay retest at 37, but again, could it be getting a little bit overheated? We do have the CME futures gap, which it is a bit of a meme at this point, but we do know that these things tend to close sooner than later. The only thing that I will say, though, if you kind of make this, like this, you could kind of argue that, we are forming, a bit of this asymmetric triangle pattern, right? That is a possibility, but I still wouldn't put out a quick wick down just to fill this level. Bitcoin only has to go down to 39,615, which might freak some people out because that's about a, 5-6% drop, but we would then close that level, and, we didn't even have a proper retest on the parallel channel right here. Obviously, long-term, mid-term, yeah, I mean, this is looking great, guys. Multiple points of contact here. We're still putting in higher highs and higher lows, and we're still holding above the major area of volume. Now, we did have this falling wedge breakout with a target anywhere from 47 to 52,000, which I still believe is possible. It could happen sooner than later. And again, the other thing that coincides with this is we have the 0.618, which a lot of times if you just do this on, previous highs, you do tend to at least test that. So we have seen the 0.5 without a real legitimate type of pullback. But again, are we starting to put in this parabolic curve? Now, if you ask me just my opinion, which what does my opinion matter? It doesn't really matter. What matters is what I'm seeing on the charts. But if you asked my opinion, I would say I'm quite shocked if we go into a parabolic run right now. It is generally not really what Bitcoin does this early in the cycle, but again, ignoring my opinion, we have something that we've never seen before, which is the ETFs, this institutional capital inflow, the $30 trillion on the sidelines, right? But, just looking technically, yes, right up around 0.618, which is around 48,776, which would coincide with the falling wedge breakout. Then yes, it is still a possibility. On the very, very lower time frames, you can see right here, we are still building this, if we were, let's say we broke out of this triangle and we fell down here, that would close our CME futures gap, and we would still be putting in higher highs and higher lows on the daily. We are still above all the major moving averages. We have all the money moving into the green. And, even if I go on a little higher time frame here on the weekly, you could see, we're well above all of these major moving averages, and we've really only just kind of gotten into this red RSI on the weekly for Market Cypher, as we've been waiting to get back in the green ever since March of 2022. So the fact that we're moving back into the green, we haven't really seen the full dump just yet. Yeah, it does suggest that there is more possible move to the upside. Again, short term meaning like within the next month, depending on the ETF approval, that could change things. But, a correction could be underway. Maybe it'll be after the approval, that'll be the sell the news. But ultimately, what I'm seeing here on this longer term chart, we have Guppy in the green, we have MACD crossing over, we have RSI still hanging out over 70 for, more than 3 weeks, which is really our sort of number. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks now. So, guys, it's incredibly difficult to be bearish really on these charts at the moment. And if we do in fact have a similar play out, getting into the the green Gaussian channel and moving into these ascending broadening wedges, the level to break is really only up around 51,000, and we had a $52,000 target potentially for that breakout falling wedge. So if Bitcoin can maintain and hold above this, you're going to end up seeing something like we did back here, where we do go parabolic, and that would be the first time that we've really, seen something like that happen leading into the halving. But of course, anything can happen, guys. So make sure you definitely, obviously, check that out. And of course, guys, friendly reminders: MetaSignal's free alerts are in fact closed. You could see this was an alert that was given this was a while ago. But this actually called the move from 38,578, and obviously, Bitcoin went a lot higher than that. So if you guys are interested, the NFTs are still available, but you cannot get access to this until next year. So if you want access, the opportunity is really only to get one of those NFTs that lock in lifetime access. So again, if you are interested, guys, it's, obviously not every single trade has been a winner. Like, to be totally honest, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is like the 100% end all be all, like every single call is going to be the best, but I would say the majority of them have been good. And when assessing it with your TA, if you are doing TA, I assume you're doing TA and not just blindly taking trades, then realistically, it has consistently given a proven edge. So definitely check that out below if you're interested. And of course, guys, if you do want to, like I said, the first 500 people, they'll match your deposit up to $5,000, 10% off for life on LeveX if you use my code, and you will know it because it'll say you're invited by Crypto Zombie. But this is limited only to the first 500 people who sign up. So just letting you know, guys, that is an opportunity. And I'll look to put a video out. If you guys want to learn how to trade over there, I'll put that video out. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. Hope you're having a great start to your weekend. Yesterday, it was actually my birthday. Obviously, you guys know I'm in Florida, but I did fly up to see the family. So I kind of took a couple days off. We were, it was just nice to, cold as hell in New York, really is. But, hey, I miss the family sometimes, so you gotta do what you gotta do. But anyway, guys, hopefully we'll be able to bang out more consistent content. I do think that, I think the next year is going to be absolutely insane. So, just try to be responsible. Try not to do anything crazy. There are a lot of altcoins now, speculative. I've seen them pumping. Just be careful with that, okay? Because unfortunately, generally by the time the public hears about it, the majority of the pump is usually over with. There's a lot of the insiders that get in early, but if you do want to allocate smaller percentages, like 1%, if you do 100x, just think about that. Think about that logic, right? If you do 1%, and that 1% 100x's, it's now the equivalent of 100% of your portfolio. So the risk the reward would outweigh the risk. Or, but if it if it goes to zero or totally dumps, and now you're putting in like 50% of the portfolio, now you are down 50%. So it's all about risk management. I don't believe we're at the ultimate just throw a dart and you're lucky part of the bull just yet. We will get there, and that's a pretty fun part because then everyone's a genius. But right now, just be safe, guys. You know, I have thought about maybe talking about a little bit more altcoins and projects, and, you know, ordinals and BRC20s are really popular right now. I just am skeptical about the amount of people who watch this channel, and I know a lot of people will just buy stuff with way too much money, and, you know, I just don't want that to happen to you guys. So that's why I tend to keep it more broad and generalized, but there will be a time soon in which I think we can maybe start dabbling in a little bit of some safer plays. But that's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. Hope you're having an awesome day today. If you do want to learn how to trade and you don't want to use a centralized exchange, trust me, guys, I don't blame you. You can check out Apex. They are a completely decentralized DEX. I mean, literally pennies. If you check out the video that's going to pop up here in a little bit, I do live trading on it, and you can literally see the fees are like 20 cents. It's like insane, right? And you get to basically have custody of your funds the whole time, which is nice. So that is it for me. Again, thank you so much for coming back to the channel. Check the tutorial out if you're interested. Until next time, stay crypto, and of course, peace out.